You know, in leadership-driven project management, we talk a great deal about the importance of leadership. But there's another important question. Why team dynamics is important? A dear friend of mine, Oliver Lehman, likes to point out that one of the critical elements that you need in order to be a leader are followers. And just because people have been assigned to our teams doesn't necessarily mean that they're following us. Sad but true. So the dynamics between each of the team members is a critical element of how your leadership will be judged and how the team's performance will actually be either a blessing or a bane. Now, as you know, in our video lessons, we like to stress practical things that you can do about it. And it means any question that we're addressing. So if you have found any of these videos to be valuable to you, please let us know by liking, subscribing, or even commenting. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to contact us. Our information for contact is going to be at the very end of the video. Okay, team dynamics. Team dynamics is essentially a way of referring to the relationships between the different members of your team and how they go about either maintaining it or not. You see, it's perfectly possible that maladjusted team dynamics can happen. And sometimes you inherit a team that has maladjusted team dynamics. That can be awful. The more effectively your team can operate, the more productively you and your team are going to finish the project on time and on budget. The thing is, you don't always get the kind of dynamics between individuals that you would like. And this is even more critical when you're in an environment where people might not ever have had a chance to get to meet each other face to face. Let's face it, in the pandemic, people were brought on board that nobody had a chance to meet face to face, and they're walking into an intact team. So whatever the team dynamics were before they got there, remember the stages of team development. You now have a completely different team. And how those dynamics, the relationships, and the interactions occur is going to be largely dependent on how you help the team build a better sense of dynamics. It's not always as easy as you would like it to be, but it doesn't have to be terrible and complicated. What you do need to remember is that it's going to depend hugely on your ability to tell what's going on. Recently, I had to take over a small team and I was a little distracted. I'd been hearing about this flu, this COVID-19. And so when I took over this team, I was concerned about my health. I was concerned about the number of people that I knew who were compromised in terms of their immune systems, just like me. And I wasn't paying as close enough attention as I should have been right from the get-go. Because when I started to pay closer attention, I realized that 3 of the members of this very small team, I mean, there were only 6 people in it, actually really disliked each other, didn't trust. And I'd allowed myself to be lulled into a little bit of complacency because everybody was following 2 of my personal favorite ground rules for teams. The things I put into team charters. Everybody was being adult and everybody was being professional. Well, it's when they stop being quite so adult and quite so professional that the sniping started. And if you listen very carefully, you could tell this was not petty sniping. This was distrust that was born a long time ago and had very firm roots. So, a couple of things. Don't assume you're going to be able to fix everything at the very beginning. I mean, as I told you, we like to give you very practical actions, but we also, every once in a while, throw in something that we think you ought to be clear about. This is one of them. Do address it. Do address it. And don't assume that you're going to be able to solve it completely. Team dynamics are not just made of belief systems and values, although they are based in it, but they're based in behaviors as well. And the environment that you create for your team is going to be a huge part in how they decide to conduct their business together. So step one, keep an eye out from the very beginning. I cannot stress this enough. Be sure that you're very clear about what you are seeing as relationships and what your experience and your gut and other observations tell you is the real relationship between people on your teams. And one of the other interesting things is that in many organizations, there are people who've been around for a while and they've had to work with each other a number of times. So step two, don't discount the strength of some of these dislikes or levels of distrust. Step one, observe. Number three, put yourself in the middle of it. If people don't trust each other, give them an opportunity to trust you. And by putting yourself in the middle, I do not mean that you need to referee every conversation or every interaction. What I would suggest is that you make yourself a resource for both parties or all three parties, as was in my case. Now, understand this. They have no significant reason why they should trust you more than the other person unless you demonstrate that you are welcome to the discussions, that you welcome any kind of feedback, whether reinforcing or correcting, and that you expect them to also be welcome to that. But that by and large, your role is neutral. Remember, your management and leadership is required for the whole team. And as such, we don't play favorites. So one, keep an eye on everything as early and as soon as possible. Number two, validate what you're seeing and what your experience tells you is the most likely scenario. Number three, put yourself in the middle as the neutral party. Remember, that project needs both your management. Now, leadership-driven project management is all about relationships, and the relationships that you build with every single one of your team members is going to be critical in order to create the dynamics that promotes high performance. I have no problem with warmth between my team members. As a matter of fact, I encourage it. And I have a tendency to approach people as if they have a 50-50 shot of getting the optimal level of warmth and personal friendliness from me as possible. That other 50%, well, that's not given until I make up my mind about whether or not you're trustworthy. So when people first meet me, they will feel welcome most of the time, and they will feel like there's a nice level of personal connection between us. But understand this, I'm not treat everyone with the same level of respect. Be courteous to everybody. Oh, and by the way, courteous for me includes punctuality. I do get a little irritated when people are late for things because I consider that to be discourteous. When you're late, you're spending everybody else's time. without their permission. That to me is a little on the rude side. I'm sorry. Back to team dynamics. That actually is a pretty good example. Understand who in your team really values certain kinds of interactions and who kind of, they're okay. They're a little more casual. And remember that as the project manager, the project leader, you have different responsibilities. Babysitting should never be one of them. On occasion, it is. But babysitting is different from empathetic leadership. Babysitting means people are not behaving well. They're not being adults and they're not being professional. Being empathetic means recognizing when people on your team need a little breathing room, need a little bit of a check-in, need to know that their only value for you and for the project and the organization, it's not just the skills they bring to the table, the competencies that they possess. It's the value that as a human being, they inherently have. Leadership-driven project management isn't easy. It's just so worth it. If you find these topics interesting, please subscribe because we do a lot of videos. And while we do have a roughly regular schedule of releases, there are times when something's just so interesting or so timely that we'll record it and release it a little bit off schedule. So if you want advance notice of those things, please do subscribe. I'm Kimi and this video is from the Leadership Driven Project Management Initiative. Thanks for joining us.